So Sagittarius, your March 2025 forecast is intriguing. There's so much energy that's going to be manifesting in the most outgoing, playful, fun-loving part of your chart, the 5th house, but not without some complications because of 2 retrogrades that are going to apply to Venus and Mercury in that area. But a part of your life that's been very, very much to the fore astrologically over the last couple of years is all about where you live, how you live there, and who with. And that's because of the rather potent energy of Saturn. Saturn can be a hard taskmaster, and it's been pushing you through these last 24 months to make sure that you are working at how you feel about things. But also, it could have seen you renovating, downsizing, moving home. It could have seen people leave home. It could have seen a new addition to the family. It just depends. There may have been an elderly parent or relative that's required your support. But generally speaking, how things feel has been a very big part of your equation. Now, as we start this month, there is a collective at the end of the sign of Pisces where Saturn is, which suggests something really quite delightful could happen. For example, it may be a family gathering or reunion, or you could feel particularly nostalgic for someone from your past, getting out old photograph albums, looking at pictures online. But there's a big change that comes quickly because Venus, the planet of relating but also of money, goes into retrograde on the 2nd, but it is still in contact with your ruler in your sector of relationships. So even though Venus going retrograde could slow down a hope with someone that you find very attractive, or it may mean that something you want to be more speculative around finances, you're not quite sure about, but it's boosted by the arrival of Mercury on the 3rd. So the angle between both Venus and Mercury, but back to Jupiter in the early part of this month, can actually be very helpful to you if you are wanting to re-engage with people, to break free of some of that limiting energy that Saturn has been creating in the last 2 years. But Saturn is still going to play quite the role this month. If we go through to the 3rd Mercury into Aries, it's a great place for Mercury to be. It can be very much more outgoing, can be a bit cheeky, maybe even a bit mischievous. Mercury is the communicator planet, but it's also about precision. If you've got ideas that you want to bring to life, Mercury is giving you the nudge to express them. Show your passion and enthusiasm to others and they get caught up. That's a very major part of your nature that's getting a break. But on the 11th, the combination between Mercury and Venus, the conjunction, could be excellent to go on a date, have some kind of conversation that is to do with being more daring in your life in some ways. But we can't escape the fact that in week 2 Sagittarius, the Sun and Saturn are very closely together, and by the 12th they come into an exact conjunction known as a Saturn cazimi. Now cazimis can be very positive, but Saturn's not particularly happy in Pisces. Saturn likes structure. Pisces hates structures. It's limitless. So it may be that Saturn's combination with the Sun does bring something to pass that you want. For example, it could be you get the keys to a new flat that you've rented or leased, or a property that you're buying. It may be that you sell some real estate. It may be that you build something in a way that gives you satisfaction. So that could be, for example, refitting your kitchen or your bathroom, because Saturn can be about putting in place something that can be lasting. But because we have the lunar eclipse, which follows on quickly after this, the second in the series between the signs of Pisces and Virgo, the Sun very close to Saturn still, face to face with the position of the Moon high in the sky in your chart. That's going to make it much more difficult to disguise how you feel, not just this month, but over the next 6 months. So if those rather potentially tricky or challenging or limiting home or emotional situations are in some ways preventing you from going out in the world and just wooing people with your immense flair and ability. It could be something that weighs heavily upon you. But on the 15th, Mercury goes retrograde in your 5th house. It could mean, to be honest, it goes through to the 7th of April. It's going to invert back into the sign of Pisces on the 30th, but it could mean that a date you set up at this part of the month might not quite happen, or there can be a change of plan on some kind of social gathering or meetup. If there is something that you're very inspired about, there may be something that just blocks you at this stage, which could be very frustrating. But on the 20th, we have the vernal equinox, and this is something for you to truly celebrate, because this is when the sun returns to Aries, but the significance is much wider, because this is the first degree, the spring equinox, of the new astrological year, but it's all about the elements. So the fire element, which of course is richly important to you, is manifested in a very potent way for the following 13 weeks. But also Venus, despite its retrograde, is very close to that vernal equinox. And Venus in the 5th house can be very romantic. So despite the retrograde, and despite Mercury going into retrograde, if there is some kind of delay or misunderstanding, or someone mucks you around and you feel, this is all about Mercury retrograde, it actually could be for a wider reason that could be revealed over the following 13 weeks. So keep the faith if that happens. Now Mars, since the 6th of January this year, was back in your 8th house. 8th house is very much about desire. It's a very scorpionic energy, which Mars traditionally rules, but it forges a stunning link to Uranus in week 3 this month. You could have a brilliant business idea that could really have legs. And what's really interesting, that although Venus inverts back into Pisces on the 27th, which is actually a very nice place for Venus to be, it's exalted here, may see you wanting to reshape your home in some ways, decoratively, buy some new objet d'art or furnishings. But then on the 29th, we have the solar eclipse in Aries, the last of that series, which also provides a backdrop for the following 6 months. So there is that fiery, warm stuff coming in for you, and it is coming in a big way. And it's going to give you the opportunity to demonstrate that part of you that I feel Saturn has been choking off. So despite Mercury inverting back into Pisces on the 30th and Neptune stepping forwards for just under 8 months for the first time in 163 years, don't be deflected if things aren't going quite at the pace you want. Because what Saturn's really been asking you to do, Sagittarius, is actually own how you feel. Your innate enthusiasm and bubbliness means that when you have knockbacks, what happens is you often just dust yourself down and go again. It's a great gift, but the problem is, I feel, for Sagittarius, the bits and pieces of unresolved issues can build up, and I feel that Saturn's brought those home to roost over the last couple of years. So if you have felt at times really quite washed out, a bit depleted, maybe on the low side emotionally, disappointed, a lack of familial support, perhaps your housing situation has been far from ideal, perhaps your family life is not quite as you want, know that all this fire energy coming in can be so good for you, but particularly because that vernal equinox doesn't just link to Venus in its retrograde, it links to Pluto. And Pluto now is in a chattier part of your scope, a much more interactive one which is much more about fast exchanges of information. So I feel that something's going to percolate for you at the end of this month, but Saturn and the return of Venus and Mercury into your 4th house are just asking you to stay in touch with how it really feels and not being hung up about that. If you are someone who is very prideful, wants to maintain an aura of competence and that you don't have any vulnerabilities. Nothing phases you. It's all go, 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 positive, positive, positive. Saturn will continue to make life tough for you. If you accept, like the rest of us, that you have frailties, vulnerabilities and fears, but you're more in touch with how you can work with them and own them and make them become part of you in a way which is nothing to be shameful of, you're actually clearing the way to release a lot of energy that may be blocking you up. And like a furnace, the solar eclipse this month and the vernal equinox are really going to bring rewards to you over the months ahead. It's just about really getting in touch with how things feel, not overreaching, being okay with what you feel your boundaries are and your limitations. Don't judge yourself. And the beautiful part of your nature, that rich enthusiasm and fun-loving part of your nature and jovialness can come back. It's just a joviality with a greater amount of wisdom. If you've yet to check out my new website, please go to www.patrickarundell.com. You can grab yourself my special offer of your combination reports, of your life roadmap report, the most important document anyone could ever read, that helps us to understand the patterns that are played out in our existence so far, but also your 12 months transit report as well. And there's 30% off. Each of these is totally unique to the person it's produced for. If you don't know your time, you can have my solar option. If you prefer to have whole sign, you can choose that. Or if you'd like to check out your draconic possibilities, your soul chart, you can also get any of those 30% off too. Please see the link below for more.